What's going on, everyone? So, a lot of rumors and speculation going around with Paul George. The consensus is that this appears to be the end of Paul George with the Clippers. Clippers still kind of want to re-sign him, but they're not willing to pay him what he wants. And we've seen Paul George in the past, even as Laker fans, right? Where Paul George, if he kind of feels the type of way, he's done. He's on his way out. The Philadelphia 76ers seem to be the destination from Paul George, but going off of the reports, the Sixers seem to have cooled off on the idea of bringing in Paul George. A lot of that is probably from what Paul George said himself in a podcast, in one of his podcasts. It sounded like he talked to James Harden, and James Harden was like, hey, don't trust the Sixers. He talked about how, hey, players talk, right? And, you basically almost describe the exact situation that James Harden went through with the Sixers. So looks like he's probably out on the Sixers. And supposedly the Clippers want to at least work out a sign and trade. Basically where Paul George wants to go. They want to get something back for Paul George rather than him walking and getting nothing because again, they don't have a bunch of money to go and replace him or anything like that. So if they can get anything back, they'd prefer to get something back to go get Paul George. And this is where I think the Lakers may be able to come in. Now, look, obviously the Clippers and the Lakers have a bit of a history, right? And I don't know if Steve Ballmer would be super open to trading Paul George to the Lakers. But again, Paul George kind of points his way there. Would you rather lose me for nothing or would you rather get something? And he kind of pushes his way to the Lakers. I boil down to what Steve Ballmer wants to do and also what's Paul George's market, right? Like how many teams are signing up to pay for him. Now, I do think the Sixers still, I think if they can get Paul George, they probably will. He's going to have decisions on his hands of like, do I want to get the most money? Do I want to go to an opportunity to win? Right. And he even talked about on his podcast, right? Like it's obviously, he wants to win. It's not just about the money. He wants to go to a place where he's comfortable. And he said it's the style of play. So, again, it's just kind of like, okay, if it's not about the money and you want to win and it's about the style of play, Lakers make sense. And look, he should have been a Laker before, but he got all in his feelings. And, he was upset that the Lakers didn't trade for him back when he was with Indiana. But it didn't make sense for the Lakers to trade for him, right? The Lakers wanted to go and get, an Anthony Davis and all that stuff. They would have been able to just sign him in free agency. And then they wanted to go and use the assets to go get another guy, right? So if Paul George would have just, wrote it out and didn't get caught up in his feelings, he would have been with the Lakers. And guess what? He would have had an NBA championship because the Lakers would have still gotten Anthony Davis. You would have had Anthony Davis, LeBron James, and Paul George. Paul George would have won his first championship and maybe several, right? Like a big problem that Paul George and the Clippers have is that they just can't stay healthy. Like Kawhi Leonard is never available come the playoffs. Like the one run where they were all healthy, they made the conference finals, right? So it's like, what does that look like with the Lakers? And he wouldn't have to be like, because there are questions about him in the playoffs at times. He's still not like D'Lo bad, but he has had games where he hasn't really been the guy that the Clippers need him to be. But this is a guy that has shown, like with Indiana, that he can lead a team. And if it wasn't for LeBron in Miami, he might have had a championship, right? Or at least been to a couple finals. So I don't hate the idea of Paul George, right? Obviously, it depends on what the return is. But if you can get him for rather reasonable, right? If it's just kind of like, hey, we can work out some type of sign and trade, have him on a cheap type return. Obviously, the contract, he's probably going to want it the bag. But I'm talking about like, if you give up like, say, Rui, Gabe Vincent and, D'Lo or whatever, and you get Paul George, I don't hate that idea, right? To where because Paul George, he could play the 2, he could play the 3, he could play the 4, right? You could even go big if you wanted to. Like, you could even do something where, say you have like Reeves at the point. I don't really like him playing the point. I don't think he's capable of that, but you kind of run everything through LeBron and just kind of have Reeves be the initiator. So you could have like Reeves be the initiator, PG at the 2. You could then, if you wanted to, go big and have like LeBron at the 3, if he's willing to play the 3. Again, I'm more likely than not, he's probably playing the 4. But you could do even lineups in general, have him at the 3 at times with like 80 at the 4 and say another big man like a Valanciunas or an Andre Drummond or something. Or, maybe they work out something to where they can, maybe you draft Zach Edey or something, right? Or you could even go with like, Paul George at the 3, go with like Max Christie and Austin. Like you'd have a ton of flexibility, in my opinion. I mean, Paul George solves a large majority of what the Lakers need, right? A scorer, guy that can hit big shots, close down the stretch, guy that can be a legit two-way defensive wing. I mean, Paul George is still one of, if not the best, like two-way defensive guys in the league. Right? Like he's incredible in that regard. Defend the best player on the other team. I mean, you could even have him, Max Christie, and like Jared Vanderbilt on the court at the same time with Anthony Davis, and it's like, good luck, right? Like, so I like Paul George. Paul George is also, when he's on, he's up there with the best of them. He's one of the best difficulty shot makers in the entire league. He has over-the-top shooting, which the Lakers desperately could use. Somebody like him that can really shoot over the top with a level of consistency. I do. I think, he's a legit two-way guy. Bring him in. Now, look, if I'm being honest, I think it's an incredible long shot. I think it's very unlikely. But again, it's like, what are your other options, right? I wouldn't mind like a DeJounte Murray, bringing in DeJounte, but I think there's going to be a lot of competition for DeJounte. So, if DeJounte's off the table, then it boils down to like, okay, do you want to go with a Trae Young? Would you go with a Paul George, right? Like if that's kind of your only options, do you just go, let's go trade for Paul George, right? Land Paul George. Obviously, he's older. Obviously, there's concerns about injuries, but he's been healthier than like Kawhi has even been. Problem is he's 34, but he kind of fits like this win now timeline, and his versatility to again play basically the 2 through 4. He played 74 games last year, which is a good sign. It's just like you look at the last handful, basically all the years with the Clippers, he's basically played around 50 games, right? So last year he played 74, like I mentioned. Then he played 56, 31, 54, 48. And then that last year with OKC, he played 77 games, 79, 75, and then 81. So his time with Indiana and OKC, he was basically a almost every game a season type guy. But since he got to Clippers, injuries really kind of became a problem. But, his role I don't think would be as big. I don't think he'd be as heavily relied on. I don't think, I think you could help him and kind of keep his minutes down. And keep his minutes to around like 30 minutes. I mean, he played like 33 last year. Him, LeBron James, and Anthony Davis, I think would be tough. Right? I think that gives you the firepower. Again, you'd still have Austin Reeves because you wouldn't be you'd be in a position of control if you're the Lakers, right? Because it's like, hey, you could just lose him for nothing. I think if all parties are open to it, and Paul George really, he's always wanted to play for the Lakers, although, you could argue how much has he really wanted to play for the Lakers because he had his chance to play for the Lakers, but again, got in his feelings, which is also why I think he's probably leaving the Clippers because he's a guy that gets in his feelings, right? Rather than understanding the situation. So to me, it's like, if you can land Paul George, I don't hate it, I'd still probably prefer like maybe DeJounte Murray just because long term, right? Not necessarily about who's the better player. I just think DeJounte Murray you'd have for now and post LeBron. But man, if you get Paul George, I know a lot of people will kind of look at it and go like, no, I don't want Paul George. He was a Clipper. He was whatever. If you land Paul George and he wins a championship with you, I don't care where he played. I don't care if he was a Clipper. I mean, Rondo played for the Celtics, right? And he was a huge part in us winning a championship. So Again, I don't care what you play for. I care about what you do with the Lakers. But that's me personally, and as always, I pass the question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Do you like the idea of Paul George? If the Lakers can swing it, pull it off, do you think the Clippers, no way, the Clippers just wouldn't do it? They wouldn't work out some sign and trade. Again, how do you feel? Whatever your thoughts are, love to hear it. Let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. Helps me enjoy these types of video, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.